What is good, guys? My name is PotatoPleb, and welcome back to another episode of Vienna Game. In the previous three episodes, aka part 1 of this series, we explored all kinds of different openings for whites in the Vienna Game. And starting from episode 4, which you are watching right now, I'm going to explore all of the middle games from the openings that we explored earlier. So today we're going to actually look at the middle games for the Vienna Gambit. And in case you forgot what Vienna Gambit was, just to give you a quick insight into the main line, it is e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, f4, d5, f takes e5, knight takes e4, queen f3, the Paulsen variation, which is the variation that I recommended to you, and then knight c6, and then bishop out to b5, knight takes f3, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and then queen to h3 check, g3, queen to e4 check, queen takes e4, pawn takes e4, and then bishop takes c6, and then pawn takes c6. This was the main line that I shared with you. Objectively, this was better for black, but practically speaking, I remember explaining this as a very hard position to play for both sides. So in order to explore this opening a bit more, I am going to expand on this opening and talk about the middle game. So according to the Lichess database, a Masters database, there are two games that were both won by white, and also on Chess.com database, there are about 6 games in this position that were played by the Masters. In today's episode, I'll be going over some of the engine-backed ideas in this opening, and I will give you my suggestions based on that. So before looking at some specific lines, let's take a look at some of the characteristics of this position. So interesting things to note about this position is that there are some major weaknesses to black's pawn structure on the c file. Although white also has a backwards pawn here on the c file, it is worth noting that this pawn structure can recover easily and create a pawn chain. Even if it en passant after d4, we can always push forward like this. So let us just assume that there are no minor pieces in this position, just for the sake of understanding this position. Some ideas for white is to push the d pawn to d4, and after en passant, to create a pawn chain in the center, like a huge white pawn chain. And it's going to be very unstoppable because these two pawns in the center are going to be passed pawn prospects in the future. And also, even if black tries to undermine our pawn structure like this, this is going to be a pass pawn in the long run, assuming that there are no minor pieces and assuming that there are no kings as well. Like, just looking at the pawns itself, there's a higher chance for white to result in a passed pawn than black in this situation. So with that in mind, let's go back here. Okay, so now we looked at the advantage for white in this position, which is the fact that it has a better pawn structure. Then what kind of advantage does black have in this case? So for black, obviously, it does have a pawn majority on the king side with a proper, safe, unadvanced pawn structure. So the king can castle into safety in the future and feel pretty safe there. So king safety is an advantage for black. Also, the most noteworthy advantage for black here is the bishop pair. Now the board is actually rather open, so so if bishops are positioned well, bishops can be used as snipers, absolute snipers. So some of the top moves for the engine in this position specifically is actually to either play bishop c5 or to play bishop a6. Now in the Lichess database, bishop c5 is played the most, with the idea of preventing castling and also adding additional pressure to the center. Now if this is played, I highly recommend playing d4 immediately, undermining the bishop immediately, and trying to get rid of this pawn in the center, which is like a thorn to your side. So after en passant, we do c takes, and then after castles, we play a4. Now a4 seems very odd in this situation, but there is a reason why the engine is recommending this move. It's because of the threat of d4 in the future. So let's say black plays rook b1, and then we play d4. Now the only move here that is good for black is to play bishop e7. But if black blunders bishop b6, you can immediately trap the bishop with a6. I mean a5. So that's why a4 is played in that situation. But even if black goes back to e7, I believe that yeah, we're totally fine here. We can just develop the knight and create a huge chain here. Just completely taking so much space while black is pretty confined in the situation. So I wouldn't recommend going d4 immediately, but prepare it by playing a4. Now let's look at other situation where black actually goes for bishop a6. Well, bishop a6 is a very natural move. It targets the knight actually by preventing us from castling, because let's say we castled and there's simply bishop takes e2 because we stopped protecting the knight. So after bishop a6, the idea is to castle for black, obviously, right? So I actually recommend the move bishop f1. Although it runs into a pin here, the idea is very simple. It prevents black from castling, and basically it just allows white to go. It simply just allows white to activate the rook. That's why rook f1 is going to be the recommended move here. Apparently the engine suggests bishop c4. But generally speaking, the engine claims that this is 0-0, so completely equal position. So this continuation should be very solid for you if you're playing in this middle game. So to remind you again, the idea for f1 is to target this pawn and to eventually develop the rook so that it targets all the weak pawns that exist for black. That's the entire point of rook f1. On episode 1, I also explored this specific position, which actually came from not the best move for black, which was knight c6, but came from knight takes c3 immediately. I said that we should take on b, and then this was the best move for black, and after this, bishop develops, knight blocks, queen g3, targeting the g pawn, and then after preserving it, knight develops, bishop develops. I explained that this was a pretty good continuation for white with advantage of 1.1. However, I didn't think I explained how to continue from this position, because if white plays with without any precision here, it's really easy for black to consolidate and equalize. So first of all, after bishop fianchettos, we should castle. I think we can all agree on that. And even in this position, although white has the advantage objectively, not all players can convert. Because as we can see on the Lichess database, even in this specific position, white only wins 47% of the time, even though it has an engine advantage, like in terms of the engine evaluation. So in this position, a lot of black players will castle. However, it is worth noting that the best move is going to be queen b6, targeting the queen. So I would recommend, if black plays this best move, I will recommend a6, and if black tries to kick you out, then just take on the knight there. With the idea of course, eventually building up an attack. In this case, yeah, a3, and then bishop out, and engine evaluates this as plus 1.3. And I would say that white has an advantage here because it has a very strong diagonal for this bishop. Um, like we can always open up the center by playing d4 eventually. This bishop, although it's targeting this, we can create some long-term liability on this file. So this bishop has to kind of stay here all the time. So I would say with those ideas, you should be able to continue playing from this specific position. Yeah. So those are my middle game recommendation. It's I hope you found it very useful because on YouTube it's really hard to find all these middle game ideas. It usually only covers openings, but it hardly covers the middle game, and I don't blame that because the middle game there are so many different variations that's possible, and we just have to rely on different ideas to play intuitively rather than just memorizing the whole thing. So I hope some of the ideas that I gave you today was helpful. And next time, I'll be on the next episode. I'll be exploring the Vienna Gambit declined middle game. Um, so make sure to review episode 2 before the next video if you're interested. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good time.